Mature language warning. Hey howdy, welcome back to our channel. In this video we are going to see what if Naruto was Red Dragon and had harem with angels. This is part 1. If you want to see next part, please leave a like. It's motivate me to make more videos. And I request you to check out author named Devils, Angels, Dragons, and Naruto. Oh my, by Mothballs, so do check out. And I have uploaded Naruto, X Pony, and Censored Lemon. So if you are adult, do check out. All details in description. Now, let's jump into video. Well, shit looks like it worked. Spoke a grinning teen who looked to be at least 17. The teen stood at a solid 6 foot tall and was rippling with compact muscles built for speed. He wore a form-fitting short-sleeved black shirt that was tucked into a pair of black shinobi pants that were taped at the ankles. Over top, he wore a sleeveless crimson-red trench coat that bore a rust-orange spiral, which had the kanji for divine wind over it. On his feet, he wore a pair of black ninja sandals. He had a pair of shining bright blue eyes that glowed even in the dark of this night. His face was devoid of any fat or blemish, leaving a refined and handsome face fitting royalty. This teen was Naruto Uzumaki, hero of the 4th Shinobi World War, bearer of the Uzumaki bloodline, and former Jinchuriki to the Kyuubi no Kitsune. That's right, former. After Naruto had defeated Pain, and the man had brought back everyone he had killed, Naruto had realized how weak he really was. He had to rely on the Kyuubi's yokai to pull him out of that jam. He also had to rely on Sage Mode to defeat Pain in the first place. Of course, those things made him a force to be reckoned with, but his predecessors had needed no such things. Jiraiya was an incredibly strong nin even without the use of Sage Mode. The Shodaime, who was hailed as the Kami no Shinobi, had no such power-up his father did neither. They were all strong and powerful ninja on their own. They had all made a name for themselves and carved out a part in the history books as legends using their own 2 hands and their own chakra. After his little epiphany, he had once more disappeared to Mount Mayaboku and thrown himself into every possible area of shinobi life he could. Abusing the hell out of the Kage Bunshin Jutsu and his own insane stamina within the span of a month, he learned all the basics he had been denied at the academy due to his status as a Jinchuriki. In another month, he had begun to learn what he was made for, ninjutsu. With his almost bijou-level reserves, he could toss out S-rank jutsu left and right like Tsunade could toss away money gambling. Not even Jiraiya or the Sandaime could claim such a thing. While his clones worked on that, he had thrown himself into actually learning a taijutsu style. His brawling style was great for unpredictability, but that was it. Using that as a base, though, he came up with his own style, which he called Otokomono no Shikata, Way of the Joker, I think. It was a style based on his natural unpredictability and ability to come up with ingenious plans on the fly. Its base form was just that, coupled with his natural speed. The next form utilized his massive reserves, and the next stage utilized the previous 2, as well as his ability to abuse the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. The next month was spent developing support strengths. After he found out from the Toads that his mother had been as deadly with a blade as any of the Kiri no Shinobigatana Shishinshu, 7 swordsmen of the mist, he had instantly took up the blade. It seemed that his mother's own prowess had been passed down as he had taken to it like a fish to water. Speaking of his mother, he had met what had remained of her inside the seal after an encounter with the Kyuubi. When she told him about what being an Uzumaki meant, he had cried and vowed that he would make his clan proud and revive the fear and awe that their name brought. Doing so, he had inadvertently unlocked his Uzumaki heritage, turning his once blonde hair to the signature crimson locks of the Uzumaki. He kept his striking blue eyes, which his mother told him fit him more. Before she left, she informed him that both she and his father had left several scrolls containing jutsus, letters, and other things in a sealing tattoo on his right shoulder. What he found inside said seal left him shocked. One scroll contained his mother's okatana, as well as scroll detailing the basics of her style, named Benaheim, Crimson Princess. His father had left him a scroll of how to perform the jutsu that had given him his moniker, the famed Hiraition no Jutsu, Flying Thunder God technique. Both had left letters telling him how much they loved him and regretted what they had to do. His father being especially apologetic, knowing that it was his idea to seal the Kyuubi into his son. Both had also left him a massive scroll that contained several smaller scrolls that had written on them several jutsu of every element, even some Jakuken time-space techniques, and fuinjutsu, sealing techniques. Within the month, he had mastered and modified his mother's kenjutsu style, mastered the Hiraishin to the point of no longer needing the markers, become a seals master easily on par with the legendary Mido Uzumaki, and learn enough jutsu to put both Kakashi and the Sandame's own ninjutsu knowledge to shame. Within 2 months, he had risen from his base level of Chunin to the level of such legends as Hanzo the Salamander and Pain/Nagato, who were said to be able to fight on the level of the Ichibi, Nibi, and Sanbai. With the use of Sage Mode and Urkyubi, he could easily be on the level of the Rokubi or Nanabai. It was at the end of the 3rd month that Tsunade had told him of the impending Kage summit in Tetsu no Kuni, Land of Iron, that would determine how the hidden villages would handle the threat of Akatsuki. She had specifically told him because she wanted him to accompany her as a bodyguard, both because she knew the progress of his current training, and having the man who had done the impossible and defeated Pain as her bodyguard would give her a slight edge in the debate. Naruto had at first denied her because he thought that he could continue to get stronger, but she had bribed him by offering him the position of Anbu for not just the mission, but as an actual position when he returned to the village. Knowing that by accepting to join Anbu, he would automatically gain a promotion to Jounin, as well he had flashed into her office with a grin and accepted. They had bumped into the current Mizukage Mei Terumi, who had inquired why Tsunade only had the one masked Anbu as her bodyguard. Naruto was playing the silent part, and Tsunade had merely grinned and told the redhead that he was more than capable of protecting her. The small group had then encountered Gaara and his brother and sister. They too were curious about the masked individual, but Gaara had taken a look at the man and actually smiled, which shocked everyone present. The individual had merely nodded at Gaara, which shocked Mei and her group, as that was more than she had gotten the whole time they had been traveling together. Upon reaching Tetsu and being led to the meeting place, they were met by the other Kages as well as Mifune, the leader of Tetsu and its samurai forces. He had explained that no weapons were to be allowed in the meeting room, and any use of chakra, however small, was not permitted. He had then told Tsunade that her bodyguard would have to unmask himself and take off the robe he was wearing to show that he was not hiding anything. In a flourish, the masked individual did just that, revealing the form of a grinning Naruto, shocking all who knew of him. Mei, of course, realized why Tsunade had only brought him along. If the man could defeat the feared Pain who had toppled Hanzo, then he was more than capable of fighting any of those present if need be. What shocked her and Gaara was the red hair. Many had thought that the savior of Konoha and defeater of Pain had been a blonde. Naruto had said that he unlocked his Uzumaki bloodline, causing the Reikage and Tsuchikage to shift in stance. They had known that he was an Uzumaki, but thought that his father's genes had suppressed his Uzumaki genes. But to hear that the bloodline that had brought fame and power to the village of Yuzu and had needed the joint forces of 3 of the great villages to take down was back was not comforting. And that said bloodline belonged to the man who had brought down Pain, had trained under the famed Gamasunin Jiraiya and Sharingan no Kakashi, and was the son of their most feared and hated enemy, the Kiroi Senko, just did not sit well with them. The meeting went off as expected, the Kages bickering like children. Mei and Gaara had tried to have some input, but were shot down by the Reikage and the old Tsuchikage. Tsunade had merely sat back and let them bicker amongst themselves with her hands steepled in front of her face and her eyes closed. After a rather loud comment from Mei, and his almost wreaking the table, the room was overcome with silence. Taking advantage, Tsunade had asked, "Are you all done fighting like little children?" Infuriating A and the Tsuchikage. Before they could retaliate, Tsunade launched into talking about her plan of having all the villages, large and minor, joining forces to take down the threat of Akatsuki. Before they could rebuttal, the forms of Tobi and Sasuke Uchiha appeared, standing in the center of the meeting table. Tobi had then begun to tell them of his Eye of the Moon plan. Before he could finish, though, a sandal met his face, rocketing him out of the room. Before Sasuke could move, he found himself on his back with the same sandal standing on his windpipe, stopping him from breathing. The Kages looked up in awe to see Naruto bowing and apologizing for his rudeness, but he couldn't stand when the bad guy monologued. An infuriated Tobi stormed back into the room, only to have a fist smash into his masked face. Tobi questioned how the blonde was hurting him when the power of his Sharingan should make him intangible. Naruto appeared behind him, his okatana held at the Uchiha's throat. All who saw it were shocked. When Naruto had disappeared, a very familiar trail of light followed him. It wasn't his father's yellow flash. No, it was his own crimson flash. Konoha once more had the feared Hiraishin no Jutsu in its forces. Tobi and Sasuke had retreated, and after seeing Naruto manhandle the two most powerful members of Akatsuki, they had instantly agreed to Tsunade's plan. Both Kumo and IWA had suffered massive losses due to Minato. They did not want to be on the receiving end of his feared jutsu powered by a bijou. In the end, Naruto had let himself be captured, shocking everyone who knew him. However, when they saw his plan come to fruition, they couldn't help but smirk at the very Naruto-esque plan. Instead of the Akatsuki's sealing jutsu absorbing the Kyuubi, it had instead absorbed Naruto himself, leaving a very happy Kitsune the freedom to use his body and obliterate most of the Zetsu forces with a combined Bijidama and Hiraishin. The allied shinobi forces instantly fought back with much fiercer opposition. The revived legends were soon dealt with by the Kyuubi in quick fashion. Naruto was busy himself, separating the incomplete Jubi and the statue. He had succeeded and freed the bijou from their prison. The appearance of the other 9 bijou signaled the end for Tobi. He had brought Madara back, but even Madara knew he could not fight against the combined might of the 9 bijou, the 5 Kages, and the true heir of the Rikudo Sennin. Tobi, or Obito as he was later found out to be, were easily destroyed. Their existence, as well as a chunk of Hai no Kuni, was wiped off the map by Naruto and the Kyuubi's combined bijou, Raisen Shuriken no Jutsu. Soon after, the allied forces destroyed the Zetsu forces, and Kabuto met a fate similar to Madara and Obito. An era of true peace came to the elemental nations. Tsunade stepped down and shocking everyone named Kakashi as the Rokudaime Hokage. She of course stated that he was not her first choice, but Naruto had turned down the position. Naruto had explained that he was happy to have fulfilled the wish of his parents and godfather, but peace just was not for him. Even after becoming a full-fledged sage and becoming in tune with nature itself, absorbing the Kyuubi's powers and freeing said bijou had given him a lust for battle. He had also grown used to living his whole life on the edge of a knife, so he could not enjoy the peace he had brought. With the combined efforts of the bijou, senjutsu, and his own mastery of Fuinjutsu, Naruto left his world behind. This all led to his standing on a rooftop at night and gazing out into the city that lay before him. It saddened him a little that this world had destroyed much of nature, but still he found a park not too far away and using his connection to nature learned what he could of the world. In the span of 10 minutes, he had learned that he was currently in Japan. Luckily, they spoke a language similar to his own and learned of the existence of devils, angels, and the true God. He wasn't too shocked by this. He had housed a massive construct of chakra that was a force of nature itself for 17 years of his life, which brought him to the question of what he was now. He had been exposed to nature much more than even Hashirama Senju and had absorbed the powers of the most powerful demon. There was just no way he could be human now. But was he a demon? No, because he didn't use yokai like a demon. His chakra wasn't senjutsu either. Naruto pondered on that. He had transcended the boundaries of humans, demons, and sages. You might think I like that term. Yeah, I'm a transcendent. Wonder if this world has ramen. And off Naruto went into this new world to do what Naruto did best, be surprising. What kind of ripples would Naruto make in this new world? Join us and him to find out. Naruto had spent his first few days in this new world getting accustomed to the various new things like buildings, cars, businesses, and all the things that came with this modern world. Learning about them from nature and interacting with them in person were two totally different things. Nonetheless, he had taken it all in stride, and through the use of Hinge and Kage Bunshin had managed to build himself quite the stash of money. Using said currency, he had purchased himself a good-sized home and planted dozens of new plants in and around the property. He may have gotten used to this new world and all, but he was still born a Konoha shinobi and a sage, and as such he needed to be surrounded by nature to feel at home. Through his first few weeks in the new world, he had encountered his fair share of devils and angels that wandered the city. Being a sage and an Uzumaki had gifted him with a rather decent sensory ability. Nowhere on the level that Sasuke's teammate Karen, who he suspected was an Uzumaki, was, but still it allowed him to sense people in his vicinity, and using said ability, he could feel the different beings around him. The devil's aura gave off a sense of darkness, which was easy to see why. Angels had more of a light feel to them. Then there were some odd ones. He could sense some angels, but instead of the usual light feel, they had a tainted feel to their energy that separated them from the normal angels. Then there were some humans who bore some of this tainted angel energy as well, which confused him even more. Being Naruto, he had to sate his curiosity and did some investigating. Being a ninja, his version of investigating meant kidnapping someone and interrogating them, though that may have less to do with being a ninja and more to do with him spending so much time with Anko after the Kage Summit. Being Naruto, though he waited to kidnap the right person. He waited patiently and soon enough witnessed a devil trying to attack and presumably eat a human. The red-haired Uzumaki had easily handed the weak devil with nothing but his hands, allowing the young human to run in terror. The arrogant thing refused to cooperate, and so Naruto resorted to using a jutsu Ibiki had developed for just such people. It was a watered-down version of the Yamanaka clan's mind jutsu, but it still worked effectively at getting what you wanted out of someone's mind. The chances of them surviving the jutsu, though, were not so good. Using said jutsu, he learned about the interesting angels who had fallen and even the great war that was waged between the three factions. After finding out the basics of the war, he could easily place blame on any of the factions, and to him, it seemed that all were equally at fault. Living the life of a ninja was a jaded one. Living the life of a Jinchuriki was even more so. The old Naruto probably would have rushed out to help the good guys, but he was the Naruto that had bonded with his dark side, had suffered crushing loneliness, and the Naruto that had grown up and accepted his Uzumaki heritage. He had fulfilled his role as the chosen one and paid for it with his blood and innocence. As far as he was concerned, the affairs of this world were none of his business. If they tried to mess with him, he would show them why he was hailed as the new Kami no Shinobi and the Nidaime Rakuta Sannin. All he cared about was getting into a few good fights and really enjoying himself without having fangirls hound him every step. As he left the alley that he had cornered the demon in, he felt three sets of eyes watching him. One a devil, another an angel, and the last one of the fallen angels. The last two radiated power even if they tried to suppress it. He would classify them as around Gar's level. The devil, though, was young, but still relatively strong, probably around Anko or Yugogo's level. Wanting to have fun, he looked up at where he knew they were and waved with a big, stupid grin on his face. "Hi there." Naruto chuckled on the inside as he felt all three of them narrow their eyes in surprise. You know, it's not polite to stalk people. Pretty sure that's illegal, actually. And before they could react, Naruto was gone in a crimson flash. I didn't sense anything from him at all, echoed the thoughts of the three hidden figures. One was a well-endowed and beautiful crimson-haired teenage girl who wore what looked to be a school uniform of some sort. The other, not far from her, was a well-dressed man with blonde bangs and the rest of his short, messy hair black. The last was a handsome-looking blonde-haired man garbed in a white robe. A few weeks later, we find Naruto enjoying the peace of the neighborhood park. He had begun coming to the park regularly at night, as, other than his own home, it was the only place that held enough nature for him to meditate. However, today his normal meditation was interrupted by the appearance of three very unique signatures. One was from the night that he had encountered that stray devil, and the other two were a fallen angel and a human with a rather odd power residing in him. None of them were anywhere near strong enough to be considered a workout, so he would just let things play out. Naruto realized, though, that he wouldn't be able to return to meditating as the fallen angel released their power into the air. It wasn't anywhere close to those he was used to, but still it was enough to irritate him. With a sigh, he ran his hand through his long crimson locks and walked to see what all the commotion was about. Naruto watched in interest as the fallen angel attempted to skewer the human with her tainted light powers. What piqued his interest, though, was that the devil was doing what he was doing and just watching it all happen. He raised an eyebrow as the fallen finally succeeded in making a human shish kebab and the devil leapt into the clearing. He was surprised at the human dying, but more at that devil. She was, to say the least, a bombshell. The girl was his age and already had curves bordering on a freaking Tsunade level, though he guessed it had to do with her being a devil and all. What really caught his eye, though, was her vibrant red hair. He guessed it had something to do with his father or his Uzumaki heritage, but he had always found girls with such red hair more attractive. Naruto raised an eyebrow again as the red-headed devil revived the human with some weird chess pieces. Guess that's how they're bringing their numbers back up? Reincarnating humans. Wonder if the other two factions have similar systems. He then saw the fallen angel launch an attack at the red-haired beauty. Naruto shrugged, knowing she could more than handle herself, but some part of him still enjoyed playing the hero, and with the crimson flash, Naruto was gone. 1 second, Rias was prepared to defend herself and show the fallen angel why you don't mess with the Grimery family, and the next, the red-haired guy from a few weeks ago was in front of her, stopping the light spear with his index finger. Now, I'm not really against violence, but I am against violence when it involves such a beautiful girl, and with a simple move of his hand, the light spear was stabbed into the ground where it disintegrated. He can't be a devil if he can touch a light spear and not feel any pain from it, so that must mean he's either an angel or another fallen. But why would he save me? I'm positive he knows what I am, so why? Questioned the still kneeling Rias. Her attention was then drawn to the battle at hand when the fallen angel huffed and summoned another light spear and charged at her fellow redhead. Showing no signs of even trying, Naruto moved his body slightly to the left and lifted up his right foot where the fallen angel's face was. The fallen angel was stopped a mere second later. He had literally put no power into that, so the fallen had just took all the force of her dash to the face courtesy of Naruto's sandal. With another sigh and his hands still in his pockets, he spun and kicked the fallen with enough force to send her flying through several trees, though that was nothing more than a love tap to him. Tsunade probably could have done the same with naught but a flick of her finger. He then turned to the kneeling redhead behind him. I know you could have handled her yourself, but I kind of got a little bored just watching. Sorry for interrupting. I'll be off now. And Naruto turned and began to walk away. Wait, what are you? The still curious Rias asked. If he was human, then she could have him join her peerage. And if he was this strong as a human, then he could possibly become near ultimate class and help her handle that issue. Naruto turned his head and smiled his signature foxy grin. Good question. Let me know if you find out, as I would like to know too. Rias could only gape in shock. Well, can you at least tell me your name? Geez, I know you're a devil, but still isn't it common courtesy to introduce yourself first? Smirked Naruto. He just had so much fun messing with people. Rias had to resist the urge to blast the guy at that weird half-insult. Sorry. My name is Rias Grimery. Naruto kept his smirk up. See, that wasn't so hard now, was it? Nice to meet you, Rias. I'm Naruto Uzumaki. But I do have to be going now. Bye-bye. And in another flash, Naruto was gone as fast as he had appeared. So who is that Bucho? Asked a curious, buxom, bluish, black-haired teen who appeared from a magic circle just behind Rias. Someone who could be very useful to have in my peerage, Akino, answered a still-thinking Rias. This Naruto person was powerful, much more powerful than he let on. It scared her to think that he may well be on the level of ultimate class already. For that brief second where he flashed away, she had been able to catch a glimpse of his power, and what she saw was unbelievable. Akino then pointed at the human Rias had resurrected as one of her pawns. What of Isis and Bucho? Oh, him? Take him back to his home. He'll be fine, and we'll have Kiba bring him to us tomorrow during school. Rias replied, waving her hand nonchalantly. She was interested in the sacred gear Issei had, but Naruto had caught her attention more than the pervert. This is odd to say the least. A confused but still calm Naruto spoke. Whenever he used the Hiraishin, he would sense these two great powers on his level for the briefest of moments. While he was in the in-between, he had used the jutsu many times in his world, and all he could see was his surroundings bleed into each other, making them look like some jumbled mess. Though that was the nature of the jutsu. The jutsu was a Jikuken, time-space jutsu, and worked by using the user's chakra to, in a sense, fold the universe in half, allowing almost instant teleportation. The markers his father used were a focal point for his chakra, but Naruto had been able to use the special chakra that was the Uzumaki bloodline to eliminate the need for a marker. He still needed a focal point, yes, but with as dense as Uzumaki chakra was, he could do much the same as his mother and turn it into chains. Using the chakra chains, he would make a sort of handrail to the place he wanted to be and simply follow the chakra chain to its end. However, his curiosity had been piqued, and so using his knowledge of the jutsu, he had used it and then ended it prematurely, landing him in what he liked to call the in-between. In his world, it was the same space that Kakashi's Kamui lead to, and the same place Obito would place his body when using his Sharingan ability to become intangible. It made sense that all Jakuken techniques would lead to the same place. This worlds in between was what had made him blink in curiosity. It reminded him of what Jiraiya had described to him that one time on their training trip that one of his spies, Kofhooker's Koff, had slipped him something called LSD. There were various oddly colored orbs floating about, and there was a sense of endlessness to it. All in all, other than the odd colors, it was an endless void just like his worlds in between. He sensed that other than him, there were two other beings that were here, and both came rather close to his own power level, and knowing this, Naruto grinned in excitement. To catch either of the two beings' attention, he flared his chakra, making the ground on which he stood crack. With his grin still on his face, he felt the two massive sources of energy begin moving towards him. It didn't take long for him to see one of the sources of energy, as it was a massive red dragon. He quirked his eyebrow as he saw that the other energy source was what appeared to a preteen dressed in a gothic loli costume of some sort. The massive dragon roared in questioning. "What are you doing here, human?" Naruto only whistled as his hair was swept back at the force of wind generated by the roar. "Well, you see, I've been looking for someone strong enough to spar with, and I happen to feel your power, so I thought, why the hell not? And here we are," spoke the cheeky redhead. "You think you can stand against me, human? I am Great Red, the true dragon." And with that, Big Red moved to squish Naruto with his massive paw. However, much to both his and Ophi's surprise, his paw was stopped from cratering the ground where the human stood. "You know, I fought a nine-tailed fox about your size, and she was just as arrogant. But damn, at least she had the common courtesy to treat me like an actual fight and not some bug to squish," came the voice of Naruto from under Great Red's paw. He pumped chakra through his arms, and in a show strength tossed the massive limb away, causing Great Red to almost tip over. Great Red narrowed his eyes as he could finally sense just how much power this human was letting out, and knew that unlike most beings who had come to challenge him, that he would actually cause him to fight. Ophis could as well, but she hardly, if ever, actually tried to beat him. They had an interesting love/hate. Well, more like begrudging respect/hate for each other relationship. "You're no mere human, are you? I cannot smell devil or angel from you either. What are you? No human can possibly be this strong." Naruto smirked as he got into the beginning stance for his Otokomono no Shikata, way of the Joker, where he relaxed his muscles and stood still. The style was meant to be surprising, and with his speed and flexibility, he could change his form to whatever best fit the situation without telegraphing his moves through his stance. Been asking that for a while now myself. Best I could come up with is that I'm a transcendent. Transcendent? Very well, I've never fought a transcendent before. So show me what you are capable of, roared a battle-ready Great Red. Ophis was shocked as she could see that Red was going to actually take this being seriously. What interested her even more was that she didn't doubt that this transcendent could very well take on Red. If he could win was an entirely different matter. Only the combined power of the four Satans or the four Seraphs was enough for herself or Great Red to do more than just swat them aside, and even then it required only a portion of their true power. This being, however, was a mystery. He looked and seemed human for the most part, but he radiated power that easily matched her own and Great Red's. "Let's see just how strong you really are, Mr. Transcendent. Luckily, we're in an endless void and don't have to worry about getting others involved or property damage, which means I can really let loose," Naruto thought as he let his hold on his chakra go. He normally had to hold down a lot of his power just so that he wouldn't poison or kill people with the amount of nature chakra and pure chakra that leaked out of him. Guess I'll start us off then. Futon. Otama Raisin Shuriken. Wind Style. Big Ball Spiraling Shuriken. And with nary a thought, Naruto's now signature move formed in his right hand, dwarfing Naruto himself. With a toss, the massive, spirally mass of chakra headed straight for Great Red, destroying the ground underneath it as it sped towards its target. With a roar, Great Red unleashed a massive beam of energy at the incoming swirling ball of doom that was Naruto's futon. Otama Raisin Shuriken, however, much to his and Ophis' surprise, instead of the two attacks exploding on impact, Naruto's attack began to cut right through Red's beam. Due to the spiraling nature of the attack, it was able to cut right through the beam with little to no effort, causing Great Red to lean to the side to dodge the attack. Shocking him again, though was despite his obvious dodge, some of his scales were still damaged. Before he could question it, Naruto was already unleashing his next attack. Katan, Karyuenden, Fire Style, Fire Dragon Flame Bullet. And with a breath, Naruto unleashed a massive stream of flames, almost the size of one Great Red's limbs. Due to his own size and the size of the attack, Great Red could do naught but take the attack head-on. With a grimace, Red's torso was bathed in the massive stream of burning flames. Naruto stopped fueling the attack with chakra, and soon the scorching flames ceased and revealed that several sections of Red's torso had been burned black due to the high intensity of the flame's heat. Great Red wasn't known as the true dragon for nothing, though, and despite his wounds, he unleashed a stream of his own flames. They bathed the spot where Naruto was, but the Uzumaki had taken advantage of their difference in size and sped up Red's massive limbs, and leapt into the air above Great Red long before the flames could reach him. Futon, Kami Oroshir no Jutsu, Godly Wine from the Mountain. Naruto called, and Great Red was buffeted by winds with such force that they would have surely slammed a lesser being into the ground and kept them pinned there, breaking bones at the same time. Even still, Red was struggling to move due to the pressure the winds created. As Naruto's impromptu flight came to an end, he summoned a normal Rasengan in both hands and slammed them both into the top of Great Red's scaled skull, sending him sprawling onto the floor, kicking up a storm of dust. When the dust cleared, a grinning Naruto and panting Great Red were revealed. With a massive roar and flap of its wings, the rest of the remaining dust was cleared out. "I can see that my size will do nothing but hinder me in this battle," grunted out the battered Red. Naruto raised an eyebrow when his vision began to distort and the oddly colored orbs that flittered around became much brighter. Being a sage and the container for a kitsune, though, meant that he knew exactly what was happening. Naruto merely snapped his fingers, and the world around him faded back to normal. He was shocked, though, when the form of Great Red was revealed again, but this time in a much smaller size. Where Naruto was barely the size of one of Great Red's claws, he was now only a few inches shy of Great Red's size, putting the true dragon at around 6 foot and some inches. "Didn't know you could use illusions, but you're gonna have to do a lot better than that to fool me with an illusion," Naruto spoke as he once more took the beginning stance for his taijutsu style. "I figured as much as I can smell kitsune on you, and they're the only creatures whose illusions best my own. Though that illusion was only meant to distract you, so I could shrink myself to a more suitable size," revealed the now much smaller Great Red. With a nod to other, the two were off and burst of speed, only seen when fist met paw. Naruto was shocked to find that Red was actually very skilled in terms of hand-to-hand combat. He had figured that a dragon of his size would just use said size to his advantage and not even worry about knowing any actual style. What threw him for a loop was how Red incorporated the use of his tail and wings into it. He used his wings as distractions or shields and his tail as an extra limb to hit with. Naruto, though, had made his style to be able to fit any situation, and sparring with a nine-tailed kitsune helped to prepare him for just such styles. The two separated, Red spewing another stream of flames and Naruto calling out, "Suiton, Daibakfu no Jutsu Great Waterfall." When the two attacks met, a huge amount of steam clouded the area, reducing the visibility of most greatly. But Naruto was a shinobi sage and Red was a dragon, so neither needed their vision to do battle. Great Red used the reduced visibility to his advantage and cast an illusion over the redhead. Naruto knew almost instantly that he was in an illusion and dispelled it, but the short time it took him to dispel the illusion was all Great Red needed to slam his scaled paw into the side of Naruto's face. Naruto was sent flying out of the misty area and skidding across the floor, red hot on his tail. As Naruto bounced off the ground, Red used his tail and wrapped it around Naruto's ankle and sent him in the air at breakneck speeds, a beam of energy following him. The beam collided with Naruto's form and exploded on impact. A few seconds later, the smoking form of the Uzumaki was seen plummeting to the ground where it crashed, cratering it due to the velocity it had gained from its fall. Even still, Red was on edge as he doubted that combo alone would put down the feisty redhead. He was proven correct, as the next instant he felt a fist smash into his scaled abdomen, causing him to bend over in pain and loss of breath. Naruto didn't end it there, though, and grabbed the dragon's skull and slammed it into his knee, though he paid for that as red scales tore into his skin and tore off a good chunk of it. Despite this, Naruto spun and heel kicked the true dragon in the snout and sent it tumbling like Red had done to him. Still not finished, though, Naruto went through a few hand seals and called out Doton, Dorihiki, Earth-style wall, summoning a massive wall of earth in front of Red's form. In seconds, the dragon's tumbling form painfully slammed into the massive wall of earth. Naruto then flashed to Red's fallen form, Rasengan in hand, only to receive the true dragon's tail into his body, where it pierced straight through him, causing him to stumble and giving Red the opening he needed. Red used his tail to slam Naruto into his own earth wall where it pinned him, then pierced Naruto's chest with his claws. He then headbutted Naruto with so much force that he was sent through the wall and violently ripped out of the grasp of Red's tail and claws. Red flew into the air and attempted to burn Naruto alive, only to catch a glimpse of a crimson streak of light before he felt Naruto slam both his feet into his back, sending him back to the unforgiving ground. Naruto's falling form only seconds behind him, an Odama Rasengan in hand. Another cloud of dust covered their forms, only for Naruto's body to be thrown out of it, a trail of his own blood following him. The dust cleared to reveal the battered form of Great Red panting heavily and Naruto's blood covering his claws and tail. Across from him, Naruto struggled to his feet, panting as well, his clothing torn and burned, yet his body didn't seem to have a scratch on it. "How are you still not wounded? I've stabbed you twice now with my claws, and once clean through with my tail," shouted an irritated Great Red. Even Ophis would have been severely wounded at this point, yet this transcendent remained unscathed. Naruto only chuckled. "My family was known for its abnormal longevity and healing. Mine was amplified due to another to even greater heights, and only got stronger as I got older. Of course, you have a healing factor. Just great. As much as I am loath to admit it, I'm on my last legs here. One last go?" questioned the grinning Great Red. He wouldn't openly admit it, but he enjoyed battling just as much as any dragon. It was in their very being to want to fight and show who was dominant, to show who stood at the top of the food chain. His battles with Ophis were more like spats, and neither really wanted to fight, even if neither would admit to it. But this Transcendent had pushed him to fight like he had when he had been but an arrogant hatchling out to prove his worth, and it had been many a century since those days. On the sidelines, a gaping Ophis attempted to regain her composure. She had been witness to many a great battle in her long lifetime where blood was spilled by the gallons, and even magic flew like the very wind, but these two. Their battle was nothing like that. Neither really used flashy magics or spilled too much blood. It looked more like one male dragon fighting another to show who was the alpha, and such fights only involved pure force of will, the very strength in their body, and the cunning they had in their minds. Even still, she knew who had won this fight. Should this Transcendent lose this last little skirmish, Ophis knew that thanks to his abnormal healing factor, which was insanely rare even amongst beings such as them, that he would simply rise once more and be ready to dish out even more. Great Red, on the other hand, truly was on his last legs. From the way they fought, Ophis knew that this Naruto person had gotten to his current level through blood, sweat, and tears, and had fought tooth and nail to constantly keep getting stronger. Herself and Great Red had grown complacent knowing that they were at the top, until recently at least. "Fair enough, as I do want to ask some questions," Naruto grinned. With a nod to each other, the two godlike beings began to charge up their final technique. In Naruto's right hand, gale force winds began to form a vortex, gouging out trenches where the winds touched the ground. In his left hand, flames that seemed to melt the very ground around them formed a similar vortex. Naruto recalled when he and Sasuke had performed this technique to destroy Kabuto and his own little Zetsu army. Naruto knew that performing the attack on his own weakened it severely, because Sasuke was a much better fire user than he was, being able to recreate the blaze release, but that didn't mean that his version wasn't insanely strong. When performed in tandem with Sasuke, the jutsu had been the only jutsu to ever be marked as a triple S rank in jutsu. His own version, while weaker, was still a double S rank. The only justice stronger than this was the version he performed with Kurama. Across the way, Great Red mentally grinned as he knew he was going to lose this last little skirmish, as he could feel the amount of energy those two attacks alone had, and they were more than what he could perform right now. At his peak, he might be able to make flames as strong as those, might being the keyword. Even still, his pride would not allow him to simply give up, so he gathered what he could and began charging one of his beam attacks. Naruto slammed the two swirling vortexes together and let it fly, calling out, "Shikuten. Kurin Shippu Shikoku no Yazirishiki, Scorch Release. Halo Gale, Jet Black, Arrow Style 0. The very air around the swirling shuriken-shaped technique was almost boiling from the intense heat being emitted while the winds continued to gouge a trench into the ground several feet deep. With a mighty roar, Red unleashed his own attack, the bright red beam flattening the ground underneath its user and itself due to the pressure the energy emitted. Like the time before, due to the swirling and cutting nature of the attack, Naruto's empowered Rasengan was able to carve a path straight through the beam of energy. Red closed his eyes in preparation for the technique to hit, only to barely feel the heat and cutting power graze his side. He looked behind him to see that the destructive technique had curved around him and miles away exploded, making a crater several hundred feet deep and several hundred feet across. Red only chuckled before falling to the ground in exhaustion. "You never quite explained me to why you're following me," Naruto asked as he calmly walked to his home, an equally calm Ophis walking beside him. "It's simple. You have the capacity to manhandle Great Red, and I want him out of the dimensional gap so that I may have my peace and quiet once more." Ophis calmly spoke, not even turning to look at Naruto. Naruto just shook his head as he could tell she was lying if slightly, but wouldn't push the matter. Due to his being the chosen one, he had received a gift of sorts that allowed him to know what kind of person someone was almost instantly, and then bring out their good traits. It was the whole reason that Kakashi had taken to calling him Konoha's most surprising shinobi. It was this gift that had allowed him to bond and ultimately save Princess Koyuki, Sasami, Cheyenne, and countless others. Speaking of adventures, he wondered if he should do something similar to Jiraiya and start writing his own story, though much less perverted than Ika Ika. Kami knows that his whole life was just as good, if not better, than any action, drama, or adventure book. He also wasn't a fan of his rather underhanded way of getting money right now. Using shadow clones, henge, and some minor genjutsu was easy, and being a shinobi wasn't against his morals, but it was rather tedious and bothersome. As he mulled his new idea over in his head, he could sense that a certain red-headed devil was trailing him and his new house guest. He had no problem with it, as she wasn't really causing him any problems, and he'd be lying if he said that he didn't find her very attractive. He had met many beautiful women through his journey, and had become quite close with a lot of them. Hell, he had housed an orange-haired vixen who had hounded him near constantly to be her mate, and had attempted to seduce him on several occasions. Being honest with himself, he had grown quite fond of Kurama during his 3-month training stint on MT Mayaboku. She had been the only person he could talk to who wasn't a toad. She had also been the one constant in his life, and as a shinobi, constant people or habits were what kept you sane in an otherwise insane world. As he continued his train of thoughts, he realized that he had strayed from thinking of the bombshell she-devil on his tail, and had instead transferred over to the women who he had grown close to in his homeworld. Part of him was sad that he had left them behind, but another part of him knew that even had he stayed, that it wouldn't have worked out. If he had become romantically involved with any human, he would long outlive them, and possibly his own children. Uzumaki longevity powered by Bijou Yokai and Senjutsu meant that he was going to live quite a long life. His ancestor Mito had lived well into her hundreds, and that was because of her Uzumaki blood alone. Kurama would have been the only candidate for perfect spouse/mate, but due to her being a demoness and not but a construct of chakra, kids were out of the picture. With a sigh, Naruto unlocked the door to his home by biting his finger and smearing blood on the handle, which only received a quirked eyebrow from Ophis. Naruto merely waved off the unasked question with, "I'll explain later." He then allowed Ophis in before he spoke out loud, "You're more than welcome to come in, Rias." He then walked in and left the door open only for said crimson-haired devil to walk through the door and close it behind her. Both women raised an eyebrow at the other before they followed Naruto to his kitchen, where there was a chest-high island with rather tall chairs surrounding it. The two females took a seat across from the other, and Naruto walked to his fridge. Anybody want anything? Water? Soda? Booze? Ophis spoke first, not tearing her gaze from Rias. Water. Rias did much the same. Tea would be lovely. Naruto nodded and grabbed the two their desired drinks, heating Rias' tea with a minor katanjutsu. He grabbed himself a beer, which Rias raised an eyebrow at. Old enough to kill, steal, and defy the law of physics. Old enough to drink and fuck was my people's motto. More or less, Naruto said, answering her unasked question. Naruto then seated himself, so I can assume that the both of you have some questions, most having to deal with who I am, what I am, and where I came from, right? Both girls nodded at that. Naruto took a swig of the beer, then ran his hand through his rather long crimson hair. Well, better get comfortable, cause it's a rather long story. Okay, so let me get this straight. You're a ninja sage from another dimension who near single-handedly brought ultimate peace to your world, ending generations of hate, grief, and darkness. You are also pretty much a deity-level being due to circumstances from your birth and events throughout your life which culminated in you being your world's child of prophecy. About sum it up? Spoke a surprisingly calm Rias Gremory. It was far from being single-handed, but yeah, that's the gist of it, spoke the Uzumaki. He had just finished telling his two house guests his life story, of course skipping the smaller details, and such due to how long the story already was without said details. As it had taken him almost 2 hours to tell it to them, having to stop every now and again to explain to them things like what chakra was and how it worked. Join my peerage, spoke a now confident Rias. There was no way she could pass up the opportunity to have such an amazing power in her peerage, even if turning him took all the remaining pieces she had left. PFT, good luck, girlie, the ever-stoic Ophis said, bringing attention to herself. Turning an irritated gaze at her fellow female, Rias finally asked the question that had been bugging her for quite some time. And who are you? I hardly feel anything from you, which means you're either a really weak devil or a regular human. Naruto turned a curious glance to the lowly-themed being, as he too wanted to know the answer to that. Ophis had only told him her name, and that was about as much info as he could glean from her. He didn't really care too much about what she was, as such things never bothered him in the first place. One of his best friends was a massive construct of chakra that had been sealed into his stomach at birth, and his worst enemy had been a human who was not more than a sore loser who had gotten stuck in the friend zone. Species and race really meant very little to him. While Uzumaki wouldn't know of me, I at least expected an heir to one of the 72 pillars to know of me, though I have grown quite adept at hiding my presence these last few centuries, Ophis said, the ever-neutral expression and monotone voice not once changing, though she did get a raised brow from the redhead Uzumaki at the added suffix to his name. Rias could only look at her wearily. If this person was strong enough to warrant her infamy amongst the 72 pillar families, then she was clearly powerful. How powerful, that was though remained to be seen. To be short, my name is Ophis, the infinite dragon god, Ophis said, leaving a dumbfounded Rias gaping. Naruto just hummed at the information, as he himself wasn't much for titles despite his own numerous ones. Back in the elemental nations, many had taken to calling him the Nidame Rakudu Sannin, second sage of 6 paths, Biju no Tenti, master of the tailed beasts, and various other monikers likening him to his ancestor. Rias, on the other hand, was left bewildered at the information. Ophis and Great Red were said to be 2 of the strongest beings in existence, only being matched by the power of the true god. Not even the Seraphs or 4 great Satans could stand up to their power, let alone the corrosive properties of their home plane, the dimensional gap. Yet what shocked her even more was Naruto's own calm demeanor, as well as the fact that Ophis had taken such an interest in her fellow redhead. To have caught the attention of such a powerful being spoke volumes about his own power, but how he compared to Ophis remained to be seen. Wait, then, how do you two know each other? A still shocked Rias asked. After our own meeting in the park, I left to investigate 2 powerful auras I felt whenever I used my father's signature technique, which bends space and time to make travel instantaneous. I found myself in the dimensional gap, as it's called, and found Ophis and Great Red there. Wait, you survived the dimensional gap? That place is said to be so potent that the very air is as corrosive as acid and kills anyone almost instantly. Rias spoke, interrupting Naruto. So that's what I felt when I entered there. But my body is special in that it can adapt to almost any condition to ensure my survival. So it must have taken the qualities of the dimensional gap and broken them down to make me immune to its effects. Anyways, as I was saying before I was so rudely interrupted, Naruto said, pointedly staring at Rias, who only giggled nervously in response. I met Great Red in Ophis, and Great Red seemed like he would be a good challenge, so I fought him. Sadly, he didn't have my stamina or healing factor, so he couldn't keep up, and the match was over faster than I would have liked, Naruto said as calmly as if he was talking about the weather. Again, Rias could only gape. Sure, she had felt a hint of his power and seen a hint of what he could do, but to be able to not only fight the true dragon on equal ground, but come out the winner was unbelievable. Such a thing had never been heard of before, and that's when she figured out why Ophis had scoffed at her attempt at getting Naruto into her peerage. She was nowhere close to being powerful enough to attempt such a thing. She knew that even her brother Surzex wouldn't be able to do, so even if Ajuka gave him a whole set of mutated pieces. With a sigh, Rias plopped herself in her seat once more as she calmed her nerves. Sitting next to her were arguably the two most powerful beings on this plane of existence. For a minute, no one spoke a word. Rias regaining her composure, Naruto simply enjoying his alcoholic beverage, and Ophis. While no one really knew what she was doing or thinking, Naruto then stood from his seat and stretched whilst yawning. Well, I've had a pretty interesting day so far, and it is getting pretty late. I know Ophis is planning on staying with me, but how about you, Rias-chan? Hearing Naruto snapped Rias out of her thoughts concerning said redhead. It is pretty late. If it wouldn't be much of a bother, I wouldn't mind staying. Well, the bedrooms are upstairs, and they all have beds and such, so feel free to pick one. Bathrooms are upstairs if you want to shower as well. See you both in the morning then. And with a small wave, Naruto was off to the stairwell leading to the beds. The two women stood seated, Rias looking at Ophis questioningly. Never thought that the Ouroboros dragon would be a gothic Lolita. Being a big-tit cow isn't everything Gremory, was Ophis' monotone rebuttal. Before Rias could say anything else, Ophis had left the room, presumably to find a room for herself. The red-headed Gremory could only fume at the insult. Bucho, you don't look too happy. Anything wrong? The blonde Bishonen knight Yudo, Kiba asked. Rias only sighed in response. She was currently in Kuo Academy's Occult Research Club building, which was used as a guise for herself and her peerage members. She had spent part of the morning with Naruto and Ophis, who she had come to dislike for her irritating monotone voice, as well as the various insults she would throw at Rias. Rias knew she was no match for the dragon god and could only fume and try and insult Ophis back, which due to her natural lack of emotions was very difficult. She had left Naruto's home in a huff because of this, and still her peerage members could tell that she was still greatly irritated. Nothing, Kiba. Just go get Issei-san so we can tell him of his new responsibilities, please? Rias said as she regained her composure. Of course, Bucho. A few minutes later, we find one Issei, Hayadu, freaking out at the idea of having died and been reborn as a devil. Before he could make even more of a fool of himself, everyone heard a masculine voice come from the window. Geez, kid, calm down. Is it really that big of a deal that you're a devil now? Both Kiba and Kaneko prepared themselves to combat the red-haired teen only to hear their king say, Naruto-kun? What are you doing here? Many members of the room were shocked at the familiarity with which Rias spoke to her fellow redhead. Many knew that she was not one for getting too close to too many people, so to hear her use such a familiar suffix deeply confused everyone as to who this teen could be to earn such a privilege. The kid over there intrigues me, and I have a feeling things are going to get really interesting for you guys, so I might as well stick around and see if I can find any good fighters, Naruto said from his seated position on the windowsill. Kid? What do you mean, kid? You don't look that much older than I am, yelled Issei. Fair point, but I've seen and done more than you ever will in 2 lifetimes. Have you felt the blood of your enemies coat your hands? The rush of adrenaline as you fight to stay alive just a bit longer? The pain of losing one of the few people who ever gave a shit about you? The shock of someone you consider a brother stabbing his hand through your chest because you got in the way? The occupants of the room could only stare wide-eyed at the redhead in shock. The look in his eyes and the slight change in his posture told them that everything he had said was the absolute truth. Even Rias was shocked at what he had said. He had given them the abridged version of his story, and so a lot of things were left out, and to find that even if he stood before them, a godlike being now, he had gone through hell to achieve said power. True power like that was never easy to attain. It always came with a price, and if the look in Naruto's eyes said anything, it said that he had paid that price in full, and then some. Issei could only nervously shake his head in the negative. Well, until the day you do, you will be just a kid to me, Naruto spoke. Rias coughed and began to explain in full detail to a now cowed Issei about his new life and how Devil Society worked. Naruto only quirked an eyebrow here and there when he found that Devil Society sounded much like life back in the elemental nations, especially within the daimyo's capitals. Naruto grew a little more interested when Rias told Issei that he was special because he held what was called a sacred gear within him that would boost his abilities significantly. To him, it sounded too good to be true. The idea that such a powerful tool would have virtually no drawbacks seemed a little too off to him. He understood that they were powerful tools, and that Issei specifically wielded the power of a dragon, who even in his world were revered for their immense power. But still, it was too good to be true. He would have to do some looking into the matter a little more himself. He may not be actively participating with any side, but being a ninja meant that he liked to keep himself informed on both his allies' and enemies' strengths and weaknesses. For now, the only thing you can do to raise your status in the devil world is to pass out these flyers and help the people who call on your services. Kiba can help show you the ropes, so to speak, Rias said, dismissing her knight and new pawn. Kid's got potential, but he's got a long ways to go before he can attain it, Naruto said while gazing out at Koho Academy in slight interest. May I get you some tea, Naruto-san? Spoke the busted brunette. That would be lovely, thank you, Naruto said, taking in her appearance. He may not be a super pervert like his godfather, but that didn't mean he didn't appreciate the female form, and the brunette in front of him was a prime example of the female form, being almost as attractive as Rias was. Rias still had the upper hand in his opinion, mostly due to her crimson locks. Rias soon took a position standing in the window where Naruto himself was seated, joining him in his gaze. She, of course, was also undressing him with her eyes, and boy did she like what she saw. He may not be able to join her peerage, but he still may yet be able to solve her little problem. It also helped that Naruto seemed to be a rather laid-back guy, with bouts of odd happiness as witnessed this morning when he had ramen for breakfast. It could also be said that he cared deeply for those he called his precious people and would happily storm the gates of hell to help one. All in all, Rias would not mind at all marrying the man, knowing full well she and any children they had were safe with him around and would be loved. Before she could enact her seduce the sage plan, Akino appeared near the two, announcing that the tea was done. Rias only gave the girl an irritated gaze at interrupting her, to which Akino could only sweat drop at, wondering what she had done to irritate her king. The two red heads took a seat on opposite sides of the table that held a chessboard. Naruto took a sip of the tea and smiled as he quite enjoyed the tea. Turning to Akino, he offered her that same smile, causing the busted girl to blush quite heavily. This is some really good tea, Naruto said, sweat dropping as he realized he had never gotten the girl's name. Sorry for not introducing myself. I am Akino Himejima, and I am Bucho's queen, Akino said, bowing to Naruto at the end. Naruto just smiled at her again and said, and my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Good to meet you, Akino-chan, and thank you for the great tea. He may not have been too well-mannered growing up, but both Jiraiya and Tsunade had beaten it into him, in Tsunade's case literally, that he had to at least know how to conduct himself. The whole time the two were talking, Rias could only fume as her queen took away the attention of her fellow redhead, further interrupting her plan. Before Akino could continue to do so, Rias interrupted. Sorry that I didn't introduce you to my peerage. You've met Kiba, my knight, Icei, my new pawn, and now you've met Akino, my queen. The white-haired girl you saw briefly was my rook, Kaneko. You called Rias-senpai? The now-present Kaneko said. Hello, my name is Naruto Uzumaki, Naruto said with his smile, and try as she might, Kaneko could not fight down the blush that the handsome man brought on. What is it with this place and emotionless lowlies? Is that their export or something? Naruto thought with a sweat drop. So how do you know Bucho, Naruto-san? A curious Akino asked. She had known Rias for years, and she had never once seen someone like Naruto around her, and she was sure she would remember such an attractive male. Naruto sighed as he recounted to them the basic gist of who he was and what he had done, including his bout with Great Red and his new roommate Ophis. Akino and even the usually stoic Kaneko grew wide-eyed and their jaws hit the floor. In front of the sat, arguably, the most powerful being in all existence, and he was calmly sipping tea. "So Issei and Kiba are the only human ones among your peerage?" Naruto spoke as he sipped his tea, causing even Rias to look up at him in shock. Though Kiba does feel a little different than most humans, like he was experimented on. Akino feels the same way, though it seems to come from her birth rather than an outside source, and Kaneko feels like a Nikomata to me. The girls knew he was powerful, but he didn't tell them what abilities he specifically held, so for him to be able to tell such things within the span of only an hour or so was amazing. Akino, Kiba, and Kaneko's species and such were kept under wraps, and not many knew about them outside of the peerage. Seeing their shocked looks, Naruto decided to elaborate. "Being able to sense who and what was around you was an invaluable skill in my old profession, and thanks to my own heritage, I am slightly better at it than most. Not as great as some of my other family members, but still decent enough to pick up on such things. You were close with Nikomata, but Kaneko is actually a much rarer and stronger breed called Nekashu." "But how did you even guess that?" Ria said in seriousness. "I'm a friend of one of, if not the most powerful Nikomata, Nibi no Bakaneko, monster cat of the two tails." And Kaneko had a similar feel. Though does her being a Nekashu have to do with her being able to use Senjutsu? Naruto said, still enjoying the tea. He had found that the Bijou had actually dimension traveled when they were younger, so they could better learn to control the powers his ancestor had gifted them with. This meant that the Bijou were known throughout most planes of existence in some form or another. Kaneko was shocked, as among the Nikomata race legends of the powerful two-tailed cat were talked of in fear and awe. Not only that, but Naruto had been able to detect her natural inclination to Senjutsu, which most high-class devils couldn't detect. The fact that he was even aware of Senjutsu astonished her. "How do you know of Senjutsu?" Kaneko asked, speaking for herself. Naruto smirked as he put his tea down on the table and his head down, causing his bangs to shadow his eyes. Yet even still they could see Naruto's foxy smirk on his face. That's when they felt it, a pool of power building, and it felt calming and warm. The source of the energy was none other than Naruto, and Kaneko knew instantly that it was what her race was known for, Senjutsu. "Simple, my dear little kitty." And with that, Naruto lifted his head to show them his now slitted crimson eyes and whisker marks. As he opened his mouth to talk, they could clearly see that his teeth had now sharpened into fangs. "I'm a perfect sage." Miles away atop a rather tall building, a black-haired, busty woman with cat ears and a cat tail to match awoke and narrowed her amber eyes as she felt a pulse of energy that was similar to her own. "Senjutsu? But who else could use so much of it, Naya?" A stunned Kaneko could only mutter out a quiet "Ho. How? My godfather made a name for himself and was renowned for being the Gamma Sennin, Toad Sage. He took me to meet the same toads who had taught him to harness Senjutsu, and they saw fit to teach me the same skill. With a lot of time, I was able to actually master the skill to such a degree that I can now use the power nature gives me as seamlessly as if it were my own," a still grinning Naruto bragged. "Wait, if that's the case, then why did you not take on the characteristics of a toad, if that's where you originally got the skill?" A curious Rias asked. She knew some of the basics of Senjutsu, as having Kaneko around meant she would at least need to know certain things about it. Kaneko herself was curious about that as well. As far as she knew, when you used Senjutsu, you became more like the animal you were closely attuned to, and from what Naruto had said, that would have been the toads for him. Yet he looked nothing like a toad, and if anything looked almost canine-like. They used to actually be the case. However, due to certain circumstances I encountered in the recent months, my affinity has switched from toads to a much more vulpine animal. "Foxes? But they're hardly known for their prowess in Senjutsu." Rias pondered. "Clothes, but no dice, Rias-chan. Not foxes, but kitsunes." Naruto grinned, flashing his fangs once more. At that declaration, the girls were once more shocked. Kitsune were among the more powerful demon/devil races, and were said to be in the same league as dragons, vampires, and phoenixes. Their immense power lay in their natural affinity to fire, cunning, and illusions. They were said to have no match in their power over illusions, and there had even been tales of such powerful kitsunes that they could bring their illusions to life, killing their opponents without ever lifting a finger. Kaneko muttered, her white hair covering her eyes from being seen. Rias and Akino looked at the girl in curiosity and concern. wondering why she had gone so quiet. While she was rather monotone, she was hardly ever quiet, and was if anything very outspoken with her thoughts on people and situations. To see her so quiet was something they hardly ever saw. "Run that by me one more time, kitten," Naruto said as he released his hold on nature chakra, turning him back into the sapphire-eyed teen he usually was. "Can you teach me?" Kaneko asked again, only slightly louder as to barely be heard. Naruto shrugged as he picked up his teacup once more. "I don't see why not. I must admit that it is a rather useful thing to know, and it would be such a sad thing to waste." What Kaneko did next shocked everyone there. She hugged Naruto as hard as she could, smothering her face in his black shirt, and crying small thank yous. Naruto's eyes softened as he wrapped his arms around the small cat girl, realizing why this meant so much to her. He didn't know the specifics, but he knew that senjutsu, or someone who used it, had been the cause of something rather traumatic in her life that scarred her enough to cause her hesitance to use what she was naturally supposed to. In a way, she was afraid of what was essentially a rather huge part of herself, and his heart went out to her as he knew that feeling all too well. To fear something that was with you since birth was in a way the same as being frightened of yourself, and that was never a healthy thing for the psyche. Kaneko, on the other hand, was overcome with emotion. She may have been small when it happened to her, but she knew her sister like no other, and so knew that what people had said happened was not the full truth. Nonetheless, she had seen what senjutsu had caused, and was afraid of what else it could cause. To see someone like Naruto so effortlessly use it and still maintain such a calm aura around him meant that he knew the positives and negatives to such a powerful skill. If he could teach her to do the same, then she would never have to fear the what-if situations anymore. "I usually don't have a problem with people following me, but come on, at least try a little harder to hide yourself," Naruto said as he sat in his usual meditative spot in the park. It had been a few days since he had met with Rias and her peerage, and outside of helping Kaneko use senjutsu, he had gotten rather bored as all they were doing was helping Issei get used to being a devil and such. He'd have no problem if that meant fighting stray devils and whatnot, but no, that meant educating Issei by having him do menial labor. It had been funny at first to watch the pervert toil away, but even that lost its comedic value after the third time. Ophis wasn't much of a source of entertainment, as she was rather content to silently follow him. It was fun trying to get some form of reaction out of her by pranking her and even trying to sexually tease her, but not once had she done more than lift an eyebrow at him. It hurt his pride as a prankster to know that she was unaffected, but he'd be damned if he couldn't get some form of reaction from her. Back to the present, he had been sitting in the same spot meditating, and a somewhat familiar signature had been watching him the whole time. At his calling out, the formerly hidden presence made itself known by walking out of the bushes that surrounded Naruto's little sanctuary. The man appeared to be in his 20s with blonde bangs and the rest of his being a light brown. He was dressed in black slacks with a reddish coat that covered his torso and fell to his shins. It seemed that was all he wore, as his bare chest was plain to see. "Darn, didn't think you could sense me that easily," the man said as he chuckled nervously, scratching the back of his head. Naruto lazily opened one eye to look at the man. "Not really in the mood to chit-chat, as you've ruined my meditation time, so get to the point. What do you want?" In an instant, the man's whole demeanor seemed to change as he took on a serious look and crossed his arms across his chest. "What do you want with the Gremory heir and her peerage?" "I can only guess that you care because Akino is part fallen angel, which means she is either your daughter or somehow related to you." The man narrowed his eyes even further. "How do you know that?" Naruto sighed as he opened both eyes and assumed a standing position across from the man. "Same way I can tell that you're also a fallen angel. Though it seems Akino's devil side has overtaken and diluted her fallen side. Why are you here? I can tell you're strong. Very strong, yet I can't tell if you're a devil, angel, or human. So whose side are you on?" questioned the man. Naruto smirked as he flashed to just behind the man, shocking him none. "I'm just here to have a little bit of fun. Fun and Anil Azatse." And with another flash of crimson, Naruto was gone. "Rainier," Azazel called out. In a flurry of black feathers, the same scantily clad fallen angel who Naruto had punted through several trees several nights before appeared before Azazel, on her knees and head bowed. "Yes, Azazel-sama?" she intoned. "Track him. Find out what you can and report back to me directly, and no one else. And do not disobey me like last time," Azazel said in a steely tone. The man had caused something he hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. He had been able to get behind him without it even registering to Azazel, and in that one moment the redhead could have very well ended his life. And Azazel was no slouch when it came to power. Hi! And in another flurry of black feather Rainier was off to follow her orders. That man. How did he know who I am? How could such a powerful being appear out of nowhere without anyone having any kind of knowledge on him? This does not sit well with me. Naruto whistled in interest as he saw Rias and her peerage fight a stray devil that had been murdering quite a few humans. That in and of itself wasn't so interesting as the thing was so weak he could have killed it without even lifting a finger. No, what was interesting to him was finding out that Akino was actually quite a bit of a sadist. He had to resist the more animalistic side of him that was screaming to take her when the busted brunette moaned in ecstasy. It didn't help that the last few times that he had met with the Gremory group, both Akino and Rias saw fit to make their relationship much more physical. That didn't mean sex, though he wouldn't turn them down if they asked, but more of them smothering him in between their bountiful bosoms and being generally more clingy with him. Ever since he had started training her, Kaneko had been much the same, occupying his lap whenever she could and acting much more cat-like than even Rias had seen before. It probably didn't help that he fed her sweet tooth as well. Must be a Nico thing, as Matabi had quite the sweet tooth as well, often hoarding massive amounts of Pocky, cake, and other such treats. In the past, he would have freaked out over all the female attention he was receiving, but after the Fourth War settled down, he had spent quite a bit of time with plenty of beautiful women, many whom openly admitted to wanting to have his children. He had even entertained the idea of reviving the Uzumaki clan with many of those same women, but still the fact that he would long outlive them and his children greatly unsettled him. And he hated that. For all his life, all he had ever wanted was family, someone to love, and someone who returned that love. He could have that, but in return would have to watch as they fell victim to the ravages of time as he remained untouched. In many ways, he had traded away the burden of being a Jinchuriki for the burden of being something else entirely, something not exactly human. As he pondered on this, his heart clenched in pain. His face grew somber, and his normally bright sapphire eyes lost their shine, becoming chips of ice. Due to him being an Uzumaki and the former container for an empath, his chakra would often reflect his emotions, and this was one of those times. This was why he had the uncanny ability of bringing out the best in people. His chakra and natural optimism would literally worm their way into others and begin affecting them, almost making them addicted to it. This power was what had earned him the moniker, Konoha's most surprising shinobi. Ophis, who stood behind him, looked in curiosity as the normally blaze like inferno that was Naruto's aura seemed to drop several degrees, feeling now like the icy colds of the tundra. She wondered why this seemed to bother her. Down below them, the Gremory group felt it as well, though the girls felt it much more. Having spent so much time in his company and being so close to him meant that they had grown attracted to his normally warm aura. To feel that same aura that usually brought feelings of joy now feel like the coldest iceberg unsettled them. What shocked them even more was that this seemed to have a heavy effect them and now were themselves feeling slightly saddened. They looked up to see Naruto and Ophis on a rooftop above them and saw what had brought the change. Naruto's demeanor had changed from his normally laid-back or happy visage to one of detachment and frigidness. Before anyone could say anything to Naruto, the redhead, he was gone in a crimson flash. Elemental Nations, Narukun, thought an orange-haired beauty who was clothed in a crimson kimono with a familiar swirl on the back. She clutched her chest as she felt her heart clench in pain. Similarly, a usually grinning Dango lover was shocked by the same feeling. Those around her looked in concern as her usually cheery demeanor turned to one of pain and hurt. Sitting in a familiar ramen stand, a long-haired Ravinette narrowed her onyx eyes as she too felt it, and she knew why. I will kill anyone who has hurt my Naruto-kun. Sitting in an office in Kirigakure, a busty auburn-haired beauty looked up as she felt something off. Unfortunately, a certain shinobi with an eye patch shows that moment to walk in with a stack of paperwork. It was only thanks to his years of being a shinobi and having been in the company for so long that he narrowly managed to avoid having his face melted off via lava. Back in Konoha, a beautiful woman with striking red hair looked up from her gardening with an angry glint in her eyes. Who has hurt my Sochi-kun? Dimensional gap. Great Red raised a non-existent eyebrow at the demeanor of the only being who could actually challenge him. Nonetheless, he shrank his form to a much more suitable size for his spar with Naruto. In truth, he was looking forward to it, as when they had first battled, he was enthused of the way Naruto fought and the things he could do. It had also been a few centuries since he last had to use more than a small percentage of his power. As such, he had begun training like he had when he was a rambunctious hatchling. This time, Naruto Uzumaki, the transcendent sage, would not so easily best Great Red, the true dragon. With a mighty roar, Red unleashed a massive beam, twice the size of anything he had used in their last fight. With nary a thought and a cold look, Naruto summoned a massive Raisin Shuriken in his hand and tossed it with such force the very air around it was distorted and the sound was slowed due to this. That's it for this video. Thanks for watching. If you want next part of this series, then please make sure to leave a like, share, and subscribe. Also, check out the author and their work details in description. Stay hydrated. Keep until then. Bye-bye.